Hey everybody! Greetings from New York this time. This is our daughter Tara and her husband Tyler's house. We're up in Buffalo, and we're going to get right into our sketchbook assignments first for this week. This was, I know, kind of a ridiculously crazy week. And there was so much to do. But I wanted to do it this way, like I explained, because you guys are going to have so much to do next week, and I wanted you to have extra time for this assignment also next week. So please don't worry if you didn't get your final portrait done for this week, because you have until next Sunday to turn that in. Okay, so let's talk about our sketchbook here. This is our first sketchbook video, and I can't remember what the guy's name was. It's Bill something. And this was the first video where he measured out the proportions, and I want you to look really carefully at this picture, because there's some things that you get to know after you've been drawing for a really long time that are easy to pick up on, and then you just know in the future. Like if you want to do a quick sketch and make it look more in proportion or more realistic, and you don't want to have to deal with making all these lines, and I'm a big fan of that, you know, not measuring, just doing it by eye. Notice that how tall, how high our foreheads are, because this is a person with no hair. So you have to imagine that this is going to be the top of the head, and your hairline is going to be somewhere here, you know, and then here's your hair, you know, whatever, however you do your hair, you have a hairline. So that's going to be appear more to be like our forehead and then our hair. So this takes into account all of that space. So think about it, your eyes are going to be halfway down your face. And, you know, beginning drawing, we don't realize that. We don't realize that our eyes are halfway down our face. Of course, my face is extra long, but, you know, that's just me. In general, our eyes are halfway down our face. And also notice that the tops of our ears coincide with our eyes. So if you take your finger from the corner of your eye and go straight across to your top of your ear, it's just about perfectly, exactly right there. So that's why this line. So here we have the face, the oval divided in, you know, lengthwise and, you know, crosswise or vertically, horizontally, right? And then you get into other little details, like look at this. The inside corner of our eyes matches the width of our nose. So if you can just do that by eye, makes it much easier. And then your mouth is going to be, you know, usually a little bit wider than your nose, but you can tell just by looking at the width of your nose. Is your mouth a little wider? Is it a little narrower? You know, there's just subtle variations, but just remembering basic proportions will help you so much. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to point out with that one. Okay, so then we get into adding some shading, and this is actually shading. You know, this is where one side of your face is light, just like anything we want to draw that's three-dimensional. The other side is dark. So here we have some shaded areas. And I thought it was kind of interesting the way he did shading. Like Schmidt said, this guy doesn't really do everything perfectly, but it's still a good idea. You know, it's like we might have curved our shading lines to indicate that this was a round cheek, for example. And we might have left a little bit of a highlight there because this is a round shape, right? A round form. Okay, and then the next slide was the third one, Now we're getting into, I mean, the nose is really the most difficult part for most people. But as long as you remember you want to make it look three-dimensional, there's always going to be a highlight, right? Where whatever is coming forward the most, see my giant hand, and and then as you go back, it's going to get medium and then your darkest shade. But with faces, you have to be super subtle. We're humans, and when we look at each other's faces, we notice every little minor thing about them. It's how we read each other. And so we're very intuitive about what a face should look like. So that's why we try to avoid any outlining, any dark lines, you know, like, see, I have lines here, sure. But do I want it to look like I have a solid black line there? No, of course not. It looks nuts. So you have to think about your shades. So notice the shade of those lines is really subtle. Really subtle. Also, like the sides of the nose. It's just, it's a curve, really. It's not a line. So yeah. And then this last one I brought in just because it wasn't something that we had to do, but one of us did do the three-quarter view. So I wanted to show you that this is a profile. So what we want for our final portrait is straight on view, where, you know, everything is symmetrical. So you want to see both ears, you want to see both eyes, you know, you want to see the front of the face, and so you're going to be finding a photograph for that. Whether you're using a picture of somebody you know that you took off your phone, just make sure it's a straight on view. If you want to find a picture on the internet, that's also fine too. But this would be a profile, so we are not doing that. This would actually be a three-quarter view, which is in photography what we say is like the most flattering angle. Here I'm backlit, so you can't really, you know, you can start to see a little bit of light here if I turn my face toward the light. So that would be a three-quarter view. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to mess around with, it's more difficult because the farther side is going to get a little smaller, and you're not really seeing that here, but you see how part of the eye, we can't even see this edge of the eye. So there's a lot of difficult things about doing profiles and three-quarter views, but that's for the future. And here we tried the eye that we imagine an eye looks like, which was the don't, and the do, which is, you know, more realistic. Obviously this is a female eye, and this eye has makeup on and things like that, but you know, they're just adjustments. I love this drawing of the lips. Oh my gosh, this mouth. Remember at the beginning of the course when we were talking about edges versus outlines. So this is a really, really good example of that. So we did a cylinder, and we tried the edge where it's like a white edge, the highlighted edge. And then in the background we shaded to show the difference between that light edge and the background. So here we have, look at this, that light edge, and then shading beyond the edge really makes the lips appear to come forward. You'll also have highlights where everything comes forward. And here again we have this really, really, really soft edge rather than outline. Here we have a dark shadow, so that appears to be more like an outline, but it's really just a dark shadow. And then a darker shadow here, so really, really very realistic, and I know it was difficult for a lot of you guys. And then the nose, this is so hard, the way that the artist did it, because there's so much shading. I know we don't want to have a really bright white highlight on our nose because then it appears like our skin is shiny, but so what? It would have been easier to show that highlight with a true white here, I thought. and a highlight here with a true white. And then it doesn't appear like everything is colored in. So there's a difference between shading and coloring in. Shading, you have that variation of values. Some people call it tones. So here we have our lightest value, medium, and then darkest, you know, where the things are hidden from the light, like this curve of the nose here and the nostril. Okay, so just so you see what I mean, well, we'll go into ours next. All right, let's take a look at your work. Get myself out of the way. Okay. Let's start with Abby. She's always alphabetical. All right, here's Abby. Oh, I'm gonna get this organized. There we go. All right, so this is Abby's #1 for her face drawing with our guy Bill, or whatever his name was. All I remember is he has a cowboy hat when he shows himself, so he must be Bill. So she did a really great job on the proportions of the face. Notice that the eyes appear to be about halfway down. The ears right from the edge of the eye. Beautiful. The mouth is a little bit low, but that's okay. Another thing I didn't really point out is that halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin is about where your mouth is going to be. So you don't have to figure out those lines. You can just put it right here about halfway. And then you can, they say eyeball it, you know, you kind of eye it. That's why people hold up their thumb and, you know, try to figure out exactly where it is. But to me, I just think about it's about halfway, and you can look and see if there's any subtle variations when you're looking directly at a person or directly at a drawing and you're trying to draw them. And then here she started to add some shading, and this shading is here because the nose is blocking the light. So beautiful, beautiful. I love that little highlight in there on the iris. Gorgeous. Beautiful, Abby. Okay, and here she's got all of her shading. I really appreciate that she realized that the curvature of the face, you know, the artist didn't really show that too much in the drawing, but the curvature of the face is going to make our lines of shading a little bit curved. Now I would have liked to seen maybe more of a highlight here in the center of the nose if we were being perfect, but remember this is practice. Maybe a highlight here up on the brow bone. Underneath the eyebrow there's a little highlight. Here on your chin there's a little highlight, you know, your cheeks, the end of your nose. But, you know, that said, I'm just referring to what I was just talking about with highlight and shading. It's just an example. But this is a really, really great beginning, Abby. Her eye turned out so good. You know what I love about this, Abby? And I know you can probably, all the girls can relate here, maybe even some of the boys. They do like, when they do an eyebrow makeup, they say to do it an ombre, you know, like where the highlight is and the medium and then the darkest at the end. And look at that brow she created. Gorgeous. Gorgeous brow. Beautiful detail of the, you know, all of that little tissue that you see inside an eye, a light eye especially. She's got all that in there and a beautiful highlight. Excellent. Oh, and look at her little bit of shading here at the corners of the eye. Brilliant. You know, that really makes the eye appear to be a sphere. Not by creating a line, but by creating an edge. We don't need a harsh line there. Okay, and her mouth, she said that this was the hardest thing for her to do. And I agree. We naturally think that everything has an outline to it. But when we are getting into more realistic drawing, things aren't, you know, your mouth does not have an outline. Unless, you know, you're outlining it with makeup or something. It has more of an edge. So here she got the edge really nicely. She got that deep shading in there beautifully. I still see a highlight here. Here, maybe you might have wanted to just shade underneath the mouth rather than make this a hard edge. But other than that, it looks gorgeous. And I love how you did your shading here on the upper lip. You left that little white space there, and you also kind of tried to mimic the direction of the skin. So, awesome. And your nose, I also thought, remember I said that was a little bit dark, but you succeeded very well. You saw the highlight on the nose. I see a little bit of outlining here, so we can be careful about that and make it more of an edge than an outline. And then also this part of the anatomy on the nose is actually like, you know, like a little bridge from the tip of the nose to underneath the nose. So then this little part here would be a little wider, but you know, just minor details. Okay, here's Bailey's. First with our cowboy guy, and it looks like she measured everything out, really halfway down, in the middle, ears, eyes match, inside the eye to the nose. Look at her mouth halfway down. Perfect. Okay, and I think this is just the angle of your drawing maybe. Looks slightly different. I hope I didn't mix anybody up again. Oh, I did that last week. But yeah, this looks great. The neck might be a little on the wide side, but unless you're a bodybuilder or very muscular, might be a little narrower. And then here where I don't know if you erased the lines or you traced. It looks like you might have erased, but wow, you did an amazing job erasing. That looks really clean. Good job, Bailey. And another thing I didn't point out before is that the iris of our eye, if we're going to have a natural looking eye, okay, we don't want to have our eyes like wide open like we look like we're scared or shocked or something. An easy way to do it is make sure that your iris, colored part of the eye, is a little bit hidden by the eyelid on the top. It can also rest on the bottom eyelid. And then that's a matter of practice as well, because, you know, sometimes that makes you look a little bit sleepy, so you can adjust it a little bit, but I find that always the iris touching the top eyelid or slightly covered by it is the most natural look. Okay, so this is beautiful. Look at those brows. She's an expert with brows. And very nice shading. I think I'd probably think about the eyebrow to the side of the nose is going to be more connected here than from the eye itself. So this line could be adjusted a little bit, just thinking about that for your final portrait. And also you might want to just erase those lines and just make them more subtle. Okay, and here she's got a lot more shading, so okay, in the beginning of the course we talked about the light side and the dark side, right? It's always like you're talking about Star Trek, right? And it's the light side or the dark side. So the light side here, shown by her highlight, means that the opposite side of the objects would have a little bit of shading, or even a shadow, you know, if the case may be, something blocking the light from hitting the other side of the face, like the nose. So this side of the face would naturally be more light because we see the highlight. It's an indicator that the light is shining from this direction. So then we would have the deeper shadow on this side of the nose because the nose is blocking the light. Okay? But other than that, very well done. I think those eyes are gorgeous and your proportions are perfect. Nice work, Bailey. Oh, and here's Bailey's realistic eye. Beautiful, beautiful. Very nicely done. I really, the shape of your brow is perfection. And your lashes are curved. I noticed that they appear to be curved like they are in real life. And your bottom lashes look beautiful as well. This is a lovely highlight. I love the texture. We could have a little shading on this side. The thing that it really stands out here for me, Bailey, is that our eyelid is going to be, and our lashes and everything are going to be blocking the light from hitting the top of your iris there just subtly. And so she's got a little bit of shading up here to indicate that, and that works beautifully. So gorgeous eye. And then her lips came out really nicely. I can see the light areas, the medium, and the dark. I noticed that your darkest shadow is the darkest, and that's perfect. Like I said to Abby, you might want to be careful about outlining, unless, you know, the person in the photograph has lip liner on, you know. And then just create more of an edge. So a little bit of shading underneath the mouth because your lower lip protrudes a little. So the shading would be below the shape rather than an outline. And same goes for the top. I love this little Cupid's bow you did there. That's an extra nice touch. Okay, and here's your nose. You know, I think this is kind of genius, Bailey. It's very subtle. I love that shine there. I like the shape, and I feel like this is the shading on the skin itself rather than part of the nose, and that's perfect. We don't really need edges on this shape. And then right here we have to indicate that little bridge, you know, the little bridge of the nose there. So that's what makes it so hard, but you've really created the illusion that this is coming forward. Beautiful. Okay, and here's Donovan's. This is Donovan's first drawing. Donovan, I think that you are imagining the shape of the face. So what I want you to do is look carefully when you're working on your portrait, look carefully at the shape of the human head. It is most often more oval than round. So that's one thing. And then with proportions, I think, you know, you could use a little bit more work with that. So imagine this is more of an oval. Imagine that the line across the center is the eye level, which always blows people's minds. They can't believe it. But it is truly real. I mean, if you take a ruler to your face to the top of your head, you're going to see it is almost always very near to the middle. So your eye line is a little high and your nose is a little narrow. And I think that this is a shape that maybe you tried when you were younger. And I run into that all the time, so don't feel bad about it. It's noses are the most difficult thing for everyone, except Abby. She's all about the mouth. And so then if the interior of our eye matches the width of our nose, do you see what I'm saying? So some of the proportions are a little bit off here, and I would go back and just do the first video again. Just try out those proportions and send that in to me, and I want to see, you know, if that changes your outlook on how you imagine things to look compared to, you know, doing something more realistic. And then here I think you did some shading in the eyes. I think this is actually a different drawing. I think you must have tried again and did some shading on the mouth. And what I notice here is that it seems your shading seems a little bit more like coloring in than shading. So remember how we talked about when you're shading you need to have a highlight, a medium value or shade, and your darkest shade or value. So you should always have that. You know, we're not drawing a sphere, but we are drawing something that has dimension. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then here, I know you were adding shading. I wonder about the eyes though. The eyes, you know, we have the whites of our eyes. So there's always going to be a highlight there. I do see a little bit of lightness for your iris, but the whites of the eyes seem to be a little on the dark side. So anyway, I'm just pointing things out for your final portrait. And then here, again, it appears to be more coloring in than shading. So in my mind, I'm thinking that you were trying to create a skin tone. So yeah, we all do have toned or skin. Nobody is white as a piece of paper. Nobody is as dark as a black piece of paper. You know, we're all a range of anywhere from the lightest tan to the deepest brown. So we're all brown. But everybody is going to show the dimension. So if you look at a face, no matter what their skin tone is, what the person is, you're always going to have a highlight where things are coming forward, highlight, you know, highlight, 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 and then some shading as things go into the distance, and then your darkest value is going to be where like creases are or where light is blocked. So think about that as well. And then here's Donovan's realistic eye. And I think that you were concentrating a little bit more on the first eye that she drew. And so she was trying to show how we've done things when we're beginning drawers, and then how we advance on to having realistic proportions. And that's like a size compared to another size, right? Realistic shapes, realistic forms, realistic shading. So this, I think it's cute how you do that. This would be more of what we call an ellipse for the shape of the eye. And you're going to have an eyelid. You're going to have, you know, because this eye appears to be very wide open. So if you were to erase this line right here and make that the crease, and then make your line a little bit lower so it's crossing the top of the iris, which is that colored part of the eye, it's going to look so much more relaxed just by doing that. And then the lashes will come from, you know, that lower line. They come from the bottom of our eyelid. That's another thing that people like to put lashes on top of their eyelid, and they don't know why it looks a little strange, but it does. Okay, and here again with your realistic mouth, I like the shape. It could be a little bit more curved here in between, but you got a nice, like, that little bump at the top of our lips. That's called our Cupid's bow. And you need to have a very variety of shades here. So you need to have your highlights, medium, dark. And be careful about the outlining too. I know it's so much, isn't it, for beginning drawing. And then here was your nose practice. This line right here would actually be more curved. And then I'm a little confused about your lines down here, but I think that it's just a matter of being looking carefully rather than imagining in your brain, because you know we have this thing in our brain that we decided at a very young age how something looks. So an example of that would be to draw a tree with two lines with a big cotton puff on the top. But you know, that's not really how a tree looks like. It's just how we imagined a tree looks in general when we were young. So this might be what you imagined a nose looks like when you were young or a beginning drawer. So now you have to concentrate a little bit more on looking what the shape really is. You would have a curve here, right? you wouldn't have any of these shapes, so you can erase that. And yeah, just work a little bit more on that nose shape. Okay, here's Haley's. She's working on perspective. Everything looks great here. When you're drawing your final portrait, and I know Haley's already done hers and she did a brilliant job, but just for everybody else, that straight on view, you're going to look really symmetrical, which means if you divide your face down the center with an invisible line, everything on both sides is going to look to be the same size, shape, everything for the initial drawing. So I'm just pointing that out because this side looks a little narrow, almost like it's like more like a turning 3/4 almost. So that's just a detail, nothing to worry about. And look at how great Haley's highlights came out. The eyes are so interesting. Here, I think I'm missing the pupil a little bit, or maybe the shine you imagine to be on the pupil. But this one is just gorgeous. This one has the beautiful shading and the curves. And look at Haley go with the edge instead of the outline. I think that's just marvelous. Wonderful. And then here's her highlight on one side, and she did the shading on the other side. So really beautiful work, Haley. And then that's her final. This is the side being blocked by the nose. We could even have a little bit of highlight left here. She left some there, getting to be so smart in her decisions. And she's got the lightest, the medium, and the dark. Very, very, very nice. And then I think this might have been an extra practice. Haley, you submitted this one as well, but you had already completed this. I think your other example is much better only because of the outlines. The outlines, they look odd, don't they, in comparison to more subtle edges rather than outlines. So that's a big difference. And then here's Haley's eye. Wow, Haley. Haley's got some experience with doing brows, lashes. The natural beauty of that crease in the eye is just blows me away. This is really wonderful work. It's everything. It hits everything. And her mouth as well. I mean, look at that subtle Cupid's bow. She's got edges rather than hard outlines. She's got every shade from the lightest to the darkest. And she even added a little detail to the texture of the mouth. Excellent. Her nose is very well done as well. She's got the highest highlight down to the deepest shading. Again, you might want to add a little bit more brightness here for the bridge of the nose that goes down underneath. I'm sure that body part has a real name. I don't know what it is, but that's what I call it. Okay, here's Ian. And Ian, I think that you mentioned in your notes or in your comments with your post that you did the wrong assignment by accident. That's okay, because there's so many lovely things I want to point out about this for everybody's benefit. So yes, this is the 3/4 view, and you also used your white charcoal rather than erase, but it's okay. I'm not against that, as I've said before. I think it's I think this mouth that you drew is absolutely breathtaking. It just blows me away. And the curvature of this face and where the eyes go, perfect. And he's already starting to indicate where his shading should go and doing the curvature of the, of the face. And wow, wow, wow. Is this what is her name? Brad Pitt's ex-wife. What is her name? Angelina Jolie. Is this her? Because, wow, beautiful girl, beautiful drawing, and the blending is great. It just looks to me like the shape of her nose and her huge eyes, and This is really brilliant. And here he indicated, you know, he finished kind of the overall form with this extra shading. And he's got those beautiful highlights, shading, shadow under the eyes. And maybe, you know, when I first looked at this, I thought you wrote, "I love this one." And I was so excited that you loved it. And then I look closer and it says, "I hate this one." So I'm not sure why. Maybe because it doesn't look like a photograph to you, but keep in mind that we already have photography. That exists. We don't have to be realistic artists, not in any way. Showing the hand of the artist is an indication that this is an artwork by a human. This is not photorealistic. And remember that we are in beginning drawing. So I think it's spectacular. Okay, and then here's Ian's eyes, mouth, and nose. And those are, look at that subtle shading. Incredible, incredible, Ian. Beautiful. Here the only thing I see is the sides of the nose are a little bit dark. Remember that we're always going to have a highlight, medium shade, and your darkest shade. So your darkest shade is going to be under here. This one might need to be a little bit lighter, but still very, very well done. And also remember the bridge. Now when we were younger, we couldn't figure out how to draw a nose. We're looking at it and we're like, okay, it's got bumps on it. And this is the kind of thing that you see all the time in beginning drawing, and it's okay. We're just learning. Okay, and here's Remy's proportions. So first thing I notice is the face is a little bit wide. Should be more oval, unless you're doing a particular person. So this is a drawing without looking at a person. So the first thing we need to do is get those proportions. So you got your center line vertically, perfect. Horizontally should be closer to the center, you know, halfway down. So the eyes are a little high as a result of that. And the edge of the eye, remember this line is going to match the top of the ear. So really, really subtle adjustments, but when we look at a face, we notice all these things. We understand what beautiful is to us by all of these proportions. We look at someone and we love their proportions, right? We're not just talking about faces here, but seriously, it's just, you know, always jumps out at us, the first thing. So I see that you did all the measuring, and it is all correct as it was done in the drawing. It's just everything's a little bit could use some subtle adjustments. Okay, and then here we've got, oh, Remy, I love that you got rid of that bottom edge of the eye. That's really smart, because underneath our top eyelid, it's going to be, you know, there's going to be a little bit of shading in there. And so you saw that, and you created the bottom of the eye, the illusion of the bottom of the eye with this little subtle curve here. So that's excellent. And you were shading all around this area really with one shade. So I would only recommend that you know, make some variations in this shading. So right here it would be dark because the nose, and remember the shadow of the nose would match the nose. You know, if there's light shining on the side, you get the shadow of your nose, and it's just like seeing the shadow of a sphere is an oval, just because the rays of light are kind of stretching it out. It's making it appear to be at an angle. So your nose shape would be, you know, kind of at an angle out here like this. And a little highlight here, and then maybe a little darker shading on this side. But other than that, great practice. Awesome work. All right, everybody, I know this was a long one, but boy, oh boy, getting ready for our final week, and those of us who haven't done our portraits yet, we need a lot of help to get that done and be pleased with our work. So Haley did do her portrait. She got her picture, and I don't know if that's somebody that you know, but she sure is pretty. And then she started with her oval and did the shape of the neck. Let's keep this girl up over here so we can see if I can put them side by side. Am I talented enough for that? I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah, because as soon as I click on it, okay, whatever. So I'll just go back and forth. So, and then she did her proportion lines correctly, but keep in mind the eye is going to go on this middle line. It's that divides the eye. So the eyes are a little high, but between the bottom of the nose and the chin, you know, here would be the mouth. Let's see how she did. See now, that transition from the last image to this one, holy cow. Wow. This reminds me of an 80s model. Her name was Tatjana Patitz. Not the best name that you would really want, but beautiful, beautiful girl. I love this subtle shading. Subtle shading here. The eyes do appear to be a little high. So look here, if you see what I mean. Her forehead looks really big. And then here's her hairline. So this is the top of her head, and her eye line is way down here. Other than that, though, Haley, this is gorgeous. You did wonderful work, and I'm very proud of you. And that is it for this week. So I hope that will help you get your portrait done for our last day to turn things in next Sunday. And I will talk to you all soon.